So what if I told you the secret to learning anything faster isn't really about studying harder? It's about thinking simpler. Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful mental model from the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. It's a technique that promises to help you stop just memorizing things and start truly understanding them. Oh man, we've all been there, right? You cram for that big exam, you get out the highlighters, you reread the chapter a dozen times, and for a second you think, okay, I've got this. Then, poof, a week later, it's just gone. That super frustrating feeling where the knowledge just slips right through your fingers, that's not a personal failure. It's a failure of the method. You see, most of us get stuck in what's called passive learning. We reread, we highlight, we watch videos, but the science on this is crystal clear. Those methods are pretty terrible for long-term memory. The real magic happens when you flip the switch to active learning, where you force your brain to actually retrieve information, not just soak it in. And this, right here, is where our story really gets going. This whole cycle of learning something and then forgetting it, it isn't just a feeling, it's a very real trap. It's a well-documented barrier that stops so many of us from making any real, lasting progress. Let's actually look at the data on this. Okay, check out this study of 10th graders. A staggering 60% felt their learning methods were just not engaging. Boring, basically. And get this, more than half of them couldn't even use the words they were supposed to be learning in a sentence. This gets right to the heart of the problem. Memorization is not the same as understanding. Rote learning just doesn't translate to real-world application. So how in the world do we break out of this trap? Well, the answer comes from a pretty unlikely source, one of the most brilliant physicists of the entire 20th century. This is Richard Feynman, and he had this incredible gift for just cutting through all the noise and complexity. His core idea was actually really simple. If you can't explain something in plain, simple language, you probably don't understand it yourself. You're just hiding behind fancy words and jargon. True knowledge is simple. And that's the core of his whole technique. It's a mental model that basically flips learning on its head. So instead of passively trying to absorb this big, tangled mess of complexity, you actively pull on the thread, you simplify it, and in doing that, you create a direct path to deep, lasting understanding.
All right, so what does this actually look like in practice? Well, the method itself is, believe it or not, super straightforward. It's broken down into just 4 simple steps.
Okay, first, you just pick the concept you want to learn. Simple enough. Second, and this is the absolute key, you try to explain it in simple terms, like you were teaching it to a smart 12-year-old. Third, you pay close attention to where you get stuck or use complicated words. Those are your knowledge gaps, so you go back to the book or the video to fill them in. And finally, you just refine your explanation until it's simple, clear, and totally smooth.
Okay, let's make this real. Imagine you're a developer and you're trying to learn something called the CSS box model. It's a fundamental concept in web design, but it can be really confusing. It sounds super technical, right? Well, let's apply the Feynman technique. To simplify this, we can use a really powerful analogy, a picture frame. So think of the content as the photo itself. The padding, well, that's like the matting that goes between the photo and the frame. The border is the actual physical frame. And the margin, that's the empty space on the wall all around the picture. And just like that, a confusing technical concept becomes simple and intuitive. This right here is the Feynman technique in action. But why does this work so well? I mean, why is the act of trying to teach something such a powerful way to learn? It's not just some clever life hack. It's actually rooted in the fundamental science of how our brains are wired. It's all about something called the testing effect, or active recall. The science is totally clear on this. The act of trying to retrieve information from your memory is a way more powerful learning event than just rereading that same information. And explaining a concept from scratch, that's pretty much the ultimate form of active recall. And you know what's wild? This isn't some new discovery. Over 100 years ago, the psychologist William James pointed out that making that effort from within to remember something is way more powerful than just looking at the book again. The Feynman technique is basically a genius system for creating that productive struggle.
So, the theory is solid, but does it actually work in the real world? Let's go back to that classroom experiment with the 10th grade students and see what happened.
So researchers ran this 7-week experiment where students used the Feynman technique to learn new vocabulary words. On the left, you can see their scores on the test they took before they started. Now look at the image on the right. After 7 weeks, the whole distribution of scores has clearly shifted up. You can literally see the improvement.
Let's put a hard number on that improvement. The average student score jumped by 1.08 points, from an 18.88 to a 19.96 out of 25. Now, that might not sound like a crazy amount, but in education research, that is a statistically significant leap. It proves this technique delivers real, measurable results.
But, scores are only half the story. How did the students actually feel about it? An overwhelming 84% of them said that simplifying concepts in their own words was the key that helped them finally grasp the meaning. They didn't just score better, they actually felt like they were learning better.
The evidence is pretty compelling, right? But like any powerful tool, knowing how to use it correctly is key. So let's cover a few essential pro tips to make sure you get the most out of this method.
Okay, first, make sure you have at least a basic understanding of the topic before you try to simplify it. Use this for the big foundational concepts, not every single little detail. And be ruthless about cutting out jargon. Don't rush the process. A really good, simple explanation takes time. And finally, to really lock in that learning, turn your perfect, simple explanation into a flashcard and review it over time. That combines the Feynman technique with the power of spaced repetition for some truly unstoppable learning.
So, there you have it. A simple, science-backed, 4-step method to learn pretty much anything more deeply. The only question left is for you. What's that one idea that's always felt just a little bit out of reach? What will you choose to truly understand? By explaining it simply, starting today.